Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new week of Date Forever. In this episode, we're chatting about moving through the challenges of different stages of your relationship, the importance of having sacred date nights, and breaking the stigma on relationship counselling. But before we get into it, Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
I have been caring for myself.
Yeah?
Yes, I went and saw the dentist and the optometrist and the chiropractor, and I think I mentioned it earlier in the year that I was trying to do a 30-day yoga challenge to try and reactivate and reestablish my practice and my rhythm. And I was on day 19 and I injured myself in my sleep.
Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. I slept odd with a pillow propped up the wrong direction. And I tried to kind of hobble through my yoga challenge for the next couple of days. But it wasn't serving me. And I took a little bit of time to stop and prop and reflect on, why was I trying to pursue it when clearly what I needed more than anything was rest. But I didn't want to give up the goal. So I had to do some reflection and be okay with listening to my body and be like, okay, well, just because I didn't make it first go on the challenge doesn't mean that I can't still achieve it. So I've just been doing a bit of self-care, consciously taking care of my body. I think maybe it's just being on this other side of 30. Everything just feels a bit more taxing on body, on sleep and exercise and diet and just maintenance. So I've just been prioritizing some of those things and making sure that I take care of this one body that I've got to get me through life.
Yeah, it's a pretty special body.
And what about you, Nath? What's been fueling you up this week?
So what's been fueling me up is doing some research into an investment goal which we set for this year. I know it sounds a little bit nerdy, but I do love over-researching things and diving deep into something. So I've been listening to some podcasts about investing. I've been looking at different investing platforms and comparing them all and diving deep into the dark depths of investing. And it's actually been really nice. And I'm really excited to see some of the outcomes that we may get out of our investments.
Are you going to start talking to me about crypto and Bitcoin and...
You're going to have your ear chewed off.
I think this is a really nice balance that we have in our relationship. You research to the 100th degree.
Research the crap out
all
of it.
The reviews, all the information, all the spreadsheets with compiled options, and me just way more intuitive. I like this one. I'm going with this one.
Yeah. You outsource all your research to me.
I do.
So on that note, let's get into this week's episode.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we've got Maria and Andy joining us. Maria is a community-minded extrovert who loves to organise large events both in her personal and professional life. She loves to learn by doing, taking on new hobbies, and believes that she should spend the limited time we have on this earth doing what we love and with the people who matter most. Andy has a passion for education and teaches year 11 and 12 in the outer suburbs of Melbourne. He loves to travel, read, socialise, and has a healthy obsession with sport and physical activity. Andy firmly believes that learning and education is a lifelong pursuit and that a growth mindset is essential in all facets of one's life. Together, they've been a dynamic duo and team for 16 years, and they've been on some pretty incredible adventures. So we're welcoming the two of these fabulous people to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, how you doing?
So just to kick off, can you just tell us a little bit about your relationship and how you first met?
Sure, I'll let you kick that one off.
So we, funnily enough, are both Canadian, but met here in Melbourne, Australia in 2005. We were both studying at Deakin Uni, and it was actually at a social event at a barbecue club, and we were sitting at the same table, and I overheard Andy say that his birthday was May 10th, and my birthday is May 11th, so I just started talking to him, and we kind of hit it off straight away. And
yeah, both Tauruses, so a lot in common. Yeah. Yeah.
Both stubborn.
Very much so.
And was it on from the moment that you met?
Pretty much.
I think pretty effortless, actually. The conversation, the connection, we just sort of knew that, we were each quality people that we were looking for, and everything just sort of flowed very naturally. So it made it easy to connect early on.
Yeah, so we know that you guys live in Melbourne, but that hasn't always been the case, right?
Correct. Yeah. So after that year, we went to Japan and we lived in Kyoto for 2 years. We were teaching English there. Then we moved back to Canada and we were living in the city where Andy's from. So I'm from Toronto. He's from Halifax. And we gave it a go living in Halifax. The plan was to stay, but it didn't quite work out career-wise. And so then we decided to come back to Melbourne, and we came back in 2009 and have been here since.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. And somewhere in that big journey, you got married, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was actually in Japan, so we've been married a couple times.
To each other.
Good clarification.
The first time was just sort of in Japan, just sort of rolled over in bed one morning, looked at each other, and then had a very casual conversation about, hey, do you want to get married? And the idea was that it'd be for us. So not the big fanfare that most weddings tend to be. This was literally just because we recognized we wanted to be together and that it was something we wanted to do for each other. So a very quiet ceremony with, funny enough, 2 witnesses whose names were Andy and Maria. In a small government office in Japan, where the I guess you'd call him our celebrant, although I don't think he knew what he was.
No, he was just like a
the guy,
clerk.
The unofficial celebrant, just rubber stamping our paper. Yeah. Had no idea what was going on, but loving every minute of us. Yeah. And we got married, and I went to work that day actually.
And this was unbeknownst to our family, by the way.
We didn't tell any of the family until much later after our.
Yeah, and so then we had the proper wedding with family 6 months later in Canada.
That was the for everybody else wedding, basically. And we were so relaxed because we had already done the dash. So we were like, it's just a party for us.
Yeah.
So when did you tell everyone that you were already married? Like after the ceremony? After the second wedding. Yeah. And you're like, by the way, that one was just
kind of gradually, I think. Family and friends were told.
Yeah, but it was funny because I just turned 26. And so out of my friendship group, I was the first to get married, and all my friends were like, aren't you nervous? I was like, because I'd already been married for 6 months.
Very cool. Hey, so obviously you've had some pretty big adventures living in a few different countries. Can you talk to us a little bit about, I guess, how you've gone about designing that life that's allowed you to do that and have some of those adventures?
I think a big part of that was prioritizing what each of us values, and that's the adventure, the travel, seeing parts of the world. We're not a couple of people that like to amass things. So where we don't mind spending our money is on experiences. And we're very lucky that we both sort of share that passion for adventure and just being active and socializing, things like that. So I think from day one, we were very lucky that we were very well aligned with what we wanted from life. So we had a few adventures early on, and Maria was sort of the catalyst for my adventurous spirit, because I had never left Canada until I came to Australia the first time. I was fairly inexperienced with travel. I was 27 years old, 26, but turned 27 my first year here in Australia. Prior to that, I had never left Canada. 26 years old, never owned a passport. And here's Maria. She speaks a second language, and she's been all over the world, Argentina and Europe and places like that. So I felt very much out of my depth, but was very keen to sort of learn from her experience. And once I got the travel bug, after coming here the first year, we honeymooned in Argentina, and then that was it. The gloves came off, and we just started traveling and having a great time. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I guess I had a very similar experience as well. Like Sammy had been all over the world as a kid and been on all these little adventures. And then, she was the one who really kicked off the travel bug for me too. And as soon as we had our first overseas trip in 2010.
I think we've been overseas like once or twice a year ever since.
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah.
Except for this last year, obviously.
Except for 2020.
2020 doesn't count.
That's right, doesn't it?
It really doesn't. It's been a god.
So you talked a little bit about some challenges that you had when you moved back to Canada and with the career and stuff. Can you talk to us a little bit about that fork in the road kind of stage of your relationship?
Yeah. So basically the degree we had done here in Australia was postgrad diploma in education. So we're both trained secondary school teachers. So in Canada, and even kind of still to this day, there are not a lot of teaching jobs. And in Toronto, where I'm from, even worse. And so in Halifax, we could at least get on the CRT list, so to do casual relief teaching, but we could only get maybe 2-3 days at the very most if we were lucky a week. And so we had to have other part-time jobs just to get by. And it was a real struggle. So the first few months we were living with his sister because we couldn't afford to live on our own. We had 3 jobs each, all casual and part-time. And between the two of us that year, our combined income before tax was $35,000. So we were below the poverty line. It was a struggle. And it's interesting. Somehow we would find a way to find humor in it all. So we would do whatever we could to still have a bit of fun. So for example, one of my part-time jobs was bartending at Applebee's restaurant, and Andy would come down when I was doing my closing duties, and he would help me put up all the chairs and sweep and whatever. And I would pour him beers because we couldn't afford to buy beer.
For the record, I would have done it without the beer as well.
And so just like flybys here, there's a similar program up there. And I would home all of the flyers for all the supermarkets and find what the deals were. And then, if there was a special, like, okay, you get double the points on this, then I would go and buy that. And then I would use those points to get us movie tickets and things because we couldn't afford to go to movies.
I wish the double points came on more products than just chocolate pudding and tuna. Because I don't think I ever ate so much of both of those things in my life.
Yeah, we had a lot of canned tuna. Yeah, so anyway, we would just find ways to laugh about it. And so, yeah, even like every month we would have to sit down and go over the budget. And, we'd be like, oh, well, our entertainment budget is $20 a month. What can we do with that? And we would literally just cackle laughing. And,
wine?
Yeah. We would buy this horrible 3-liter jug wine. It was just a California table red called Carlo Rossi. It was nasty, but it was what we could afford.
But when the budget is $20 for the month, you make it happen.
You got the job done for sure.
So it sounds like that your relationship was the one solid thing throughout that whole period. So what did you do, I guess, to keep that solid and to use that as a platform to move forward?
I think we're both really good, surprisingly, at recognizing when the other person is super stressed and and then doing something to support them and kind of backing off. So we've never really fought all that much. We tend to know if there's an issue that comes up that I'll recognize if he's dug in his heels and he's not budging or he's super stressed, and then I'll back off and I'll, start to look at his perspective and vice versa. We don't tend to really butt heads that much.
And when we recognize those moments, the other person's quite good at supporting and offering advice and whatever's needed. So, I had a moment during that whole period that year where I was, doing some substitute teaching at this very, very rough school. And it was just a terrible day. And then I still had to leave that job and go wait tables at a family restaurant. And I was not feeling that day. I was like, screw this job. I'm done. I can't do it. And then she should have just helped me.
There was a few expletives in there too.
There was a few. I softened it.
Cleaned it up.
But she basically just, had a chat to me on the phone and said, it's okay. We're not going to be doing this for a long, long time. But we need this job sort of thing. I found my calm center because of her voice of reason and just soldiered on. So that was, all of that together was great, but it was also what solidified our decision to come back to Australia because we knew that for the health of our relationship, that was not sustainable because it was putting too much pressure financially and everything else. We didn't have time or money to even enjoy each other's company because we're working, 3 jobs each. So, there were days we worked 7 days a week, sometimes 2 jobs a day. So it just, it had to change.
Yeah, Nathan and I were quite similar that we got together while we were both studying. Nathan was at uni, I was at TAFE, and that stage of life is hard, where you're poor in finances, you're poor in energy, you're poor in time, and then you just have no money. So it's really interesting that you kind of share that because obviously you've been through those different sort of ages and stages of life as individuals, but obviously your relationship has grown throughout that time. And I'm sure the elements of your relationship that were kicking around that 26, 27, 28 early stage to now are probably quite different. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the things that have evolved in that time?
I guess at one point, that quintessential real life sets in and you get so busy with your professions and just the daily running of your lives that I think sometimes you forget to prioritize each other and understand that downtime, that connected time is so important to maintain. And so you have to put a lot more time and energy into proactively fostering that between you. And so I guess that's a very long, gradual process that takes, 15 years of marriage to sort of figure out, and, making a lot of mistakes along the way. But I guess one of the biggest challenges would be the actual actions to take. That's where a lot of the information that you seek, the helpful hints, the tips, whatever, it helps sort of formalize what actions need to be taken to help, I guess, strengthen the relationship. Because words are great, but words only go so far. And then those words have to translate into something that both of you are willing to do to improve the situation. So it's not just about work and the running of the household from day to day. Because one of the biggest challenges was we found ourselves at one point becoming more like really efficient housemates as opposed to a couple. Like, we were running things pretty smoothly, each taking on different portions of the responsibilities. But sometimes, because of her hobbies and mine and work, it's almost like we just pass each other in the to and fro of daily running of things. So yeah, I think more recently, especially in the last year or so, we've really sort of developed a lot of those strategies and things and approaches that help us find that time, to make that time. Actually, it's quite a deliberate effort.
Yeah, deliberately carving out that time. Yeah, and I would say, so we got together kind of young. I was, 23, he was 26. There was all this, you're going through the honeymoon phase, and then there's all this adventure and changing of countries and all that kind of stuff. And then when we first got back here in 2009, we're kind of setting up our new life and are establishing our careers and creating, networks of friends, because we don't have any family here. So for us, friends literally are the family that we choose. So it's very important. And so, yeah, it's all kind of really exciting and new. And then eventually, once we kind of were established in our careers and our new life here and all of that, and you do get busy, and it becomes, I think, very easy once you pass that honeymoon stage to, kind of just coexist and not make that romance a priority, because there's so many things that you have to think about and talk about as a couple when you live together. What are we going to have for dinner? What groceries need to be done? What things need to be done around the house? Where are we going to go for, holidays? All that kind of stuff.
How much money's in the bank? When are we having sex?
Exactly.
But that's not romantic stuff.
No, and not at all. So I guess just over a year ago, we kind of got to this bit of a funk stage where we felt like, we're really good housemates almost. We still have a lot of love and respect for each other, but we weren't fighting or anything, but we'd lost the spark, let's say. Anyway, and so then we went and saw a marriage counselor, best decision.
Yep.
And she recommended a book called 8 Dates by the Gottman Institute, and started reading through that and continuing with counseling. And then we started making deliberate date nights. And that was a game changer for us. And funny enough, lockdown life in 2020 actually kind of helped a little bit, because we had to kind of reimagine date nights and reinvent that. And because we were just in the house all day, every day, with no real kind of social outlet, we had to find ways to find that connection time just at home.
Yeah. And you do live in Melbourne, who had some of the most severe lockdown rules and regulations and restrictions in the world, and for a really long time. So I've had the pleasure of seeing a couple of these snapshots of your dates across this last year or so. Can you tell us, you said we got creative. Tell us a little bit about what you did.
All right.
Well, I mean, with a 5K restriction, your destinations for date nights are few and far between.
And a 1 hour exercise, one hour outside exercise time limit.
1 hour outside the house.
Yeah.
I guess what I liked about the whole process was that we learned through various, podcasts and other materials and resources that dates don't have to be, pull out all the stops. Dates can be something really simple where the two of you just carve out some time in a space to connect. And so not far from here, it's only about a 3-kilometer walk. I teed up a picnic. So we decided that we would alternate date night plans. So one week it's my turn, next week it's her turn. And we can do it as a surprise or let the person know, whatever. And so I just planned a bit of a picnic in the park. There's a nice park not far from us. There's a bit of a gazebo there, lots of plants and shrubs, very sort of secluded. And we just had an outdoor picnic and had the blanket and some music and a few candles. And that
But it was a surprise. So he had left a really nice clue for me. He's an English teacher, so it was also written in poem form, and basically telling me to get on my bike and meet him down at this park. And and then he had, set up candles and music and all this kind of stuff. So it was really, really lovely. I did an Oktoberfest one.
That was awesome.
For him. So he's never been to even like, the fake Oktoberfest like that we have, here
in Australia.
He's never been to one. And anyway, and so I had found this kind of German beer wench costume thing. And I got dressed up and I'd gone to Aldi. It was during October and Aldi sells all kinds of German
bits and pieces,
foods and things. During that month. So it was a German menu, German beer. And then I put on some Oktoberfest music and it was all a surprise. So basically told him to, open the garage door from the front and then I came from the back and then opened it up and I was in my costume. And I was
surprise!
And the attention to detail was fantastic. I mean, she was even putting on horrible, but putting on an accent of like
there was commitment to the character.
Exactly. So it was actually a really nice surprise. I had no idea what she had planned, and again, it was sort of at the height of the lockdown, so we're pretty much trapped in the house. So she got very creative and made it a very special day, and it was just lovely. So that's something we got really good at, was because sometimes I tend to be a little bit maybe OCD in a way, and so when I plan something romantic, it has to be big or whatever, and so sometimes I put a lot of pressure on myself to do something really big and monumental, and yet it doesn't have to be that at all, and so it just made things so much easier. It's like, oh, okay, so that's what a date can be.
And also then another aspect was our spa chats. We have an outdoor spa, and that became kind of our post-work day, because we were both working from home as well. Post-work day, escape from the house and just talk to each other about how we're feeling, how things are going, aspirations.
And we'd be in there for sometimes an hour, hour and a half, just chatting the whole time, having really good quality conversations about more than just our day. It always led to deeper conversations about things that we're feeling and thinking and concerns about the future, what have you. So,
But it was interesting. It was almost like that spa became that place for it.
Place for that,
It was really interesting.
It's a very relaxing space. So, I mean, it helps the conversation flow quite easily, I think.
Yeah, but it's really nice, almost like a ritual that you had created that induced those conversations or the opportunities to go a little bit deeper.
So around those date nights, you kind of mentioned that there is a rhythm and a planning in now. So what does that look like for the two of you?
So definitely once a week.
Yep.
And so we would discuss like, okay, so this week is my week. And then I would say what day the thing would happen, or we would look at our calendar for the week together and say, okay, so what do you got on this week? I mean, during lockdown, there wasn't a whole lot. And then, pick the day for the date night based on that. But and then when we were in stage 4 lockdown, which was the harshest, that's when we decided that each week it would also have a surprise element to it, just so that we would have something to look forward to.
Yeah, and some variety, some element of unknown.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We had mapped out a bunch of ideas together. So early on, when the date night idea was sort of coming to fruition, we'd created a bit of a Google sheet anyway of just throwing out all these ideas of things that we wanted to do together. So those were all sort of the shared ideas that we could draw from that list. But then, the added sort of surprise date night part of it was lovely as well. Just to have that date every now and then that the other person plans. You have no idea what's going to happen. It's very exciting and something you can look forward to all week.
Yeah.
And even when you're the planner, it's exciting to be planning a surprise.
Create an experience.
Yeah.
I really like that you shared that. And even just the practicality of like, get a Google sheet, dump all your ideas in there. Because Nathan and I were at the beach, a week or so ago, right at the cusp of the new year. And we were like, what are some of the dates that we want to have this year? And we probably brainstormed like maybe 30, 40, like unusual kind of dates or date ideas or places that we wanted to go or things that we wanted to experience. Some of them were high cost, some of them were low cost, some of them were no cost. And it was like, why aren't we doing these things? And it was just, I think we needed to create that central place of like, here's all the ideas so that when we feel a bit stuck and we're falling into the default, let's go to that same restaurant that we really like, but is comfortable. We have a list to pull on
Yeah.
But we run a similar system, but we're not quite as enthusiastic as you guys. We do it every other week. So we do 2 a month. Yeah, they go in the diary and like you said, they're prioritized. And it's taken us a little while to find our rhythm, and what works for us. And I think that's one of the beautiful things of every relationship. It can be different.
We also do the same thing of alternating between us organizing. So.
Yeah, hosting.
And even with, our little Google spreadsheet, so we'll have the idea, and then next to it, we have a column of cost.
Yeah.
And so we'll put like free or $1 sign for low cost, 2 for mid, and 3 for expensive. And so, because I'm kind of, spreadsheet queen. And then you can filter by cost if you want to, and whatever.
Even just the application of using spreadsheets was part of a way that we connected, because it wasn't good enough to have one calendar or one list that either one of us controlled. This way here, as a Google Sheet, the app's on our phone. At any point throughout the day, I can go through and punch in an idea or draw from an idea. And so it was another way of connecting to make sure we were on the same page and both contributing. Because when it comes to admin, I would tend to leave more of that to Maria, because she is really well organized, and it's kind of what she does and is very proficient at it. But it wasn't good enough to take a back seat. So I wanted to have a more active role in helping to organize that sort of stuff. And so even just the boring organizational aspect of it all has still been another way to sort of connect and grow together.
Yeah. I like that. And I like what you shared there about having the individual calendars. So Nathan and I share our calendars with each other. So it's pretty easy to see when each other are available and that. But I know that that's not the norm for some couples who don't have that level of transparency over each other's movements. It's not, I guess for me, I don't have anything to hide. But also, I'm much more organized than Nath too. So my calendar is my truth. So that works really well for us. It's just, another little tip that might help someone who's, struggling to get on the same page.
It took me several years to get Andy onto the calendar, because he was more about paper calendars.
Yeah, old school.
And he's gotten onto electronic calendar maybe a couple years ago, and we put everything into each other's electronic calendars, and so that way we know what free time we have to plan things and so on. And it's definitely for me made things a lot easier. It was a bit of a bone of contention in the past, because I would go book something in and he'd be like, oh well, I have blah de blah, and I was like, well, how was I meant to know that?
It wasn't in the calendar.
Yeah, if you're willing to go there, I'd love to circle back to the two of you deciding to go and see a marriage counselor or a therapist or someone to help, a third party. You said it's one of the best things that you've ever done. How did you get to a place where you're like, we need to invest in this? And what were the canary in the coal mine where you're like, this is no longer a problem that we can deal with just the two of us?
So I guess from my perspective, I had been wanting to go to counseling for a couple of years, and Andy was very resistant. And so, when I would bring up, what I was feeling, so I was feeling like we weren't, connecting on that emotional level and all that kind of stuff, he would then make efforts to do what he thought I needed. And that would work for a little bit, but then things would then kind of slip, especially during the school year. So like on school holidays, things would be a bit better. And then once he was back to work, we'd kind of slip into old patterns, etc. And so, then it was late November of 2019. And I just felt like we just were not in sync. We were not connecting emotionally. And again, we weren't fighting, but there was just this distance. There was a lack of warmth there, and I just couldn't stand it anymore. And so I actually went and stayed with a friend for a couple of days, and I said that I wanted a bit of space, and I didn't want us to contact each other for those 2 or 3 nights, and give us time to reflect and so on. And so we both reflected quite a bit over those few days, and we both wrote each other a letter. And so then the plan was that on the Saturday, I would come back home and we would discuss. And so Andy had sent me his letter on the Saturday morning before I got on the train to come home, and so did I. And in my letter, I said something along the lines of, if you're willing to organize counseling, I will go. But because that was also part of the dynamic in our relationship, where I was always the organizer and I was the initiator. And so I kind of was like, look, if you want this, if you want to make it work, then you organize. And then while I was on the train ride home, I got a calendar invite for our first marriage counseling session. So he'd organized it. And I came home and we had a big discussion, and we both knew that we wanted to make this work and that it was definitely worth saving, but that we needed some help. And so Andy was quite nervous for our first counseling session, but then I think he found that it went a lot better than he had thought it might.
And I think my initial aversion was sort of a stigma for me attached to counseling that I had to let go of. And, when you're not in shape, you go to a gym, you get a personal trainer. When you feel sick, you go to a doctor. And so in my mind, I reconciled that by just thinking, well, this is a professional. We're struggling with a very important aspect of our lives, and we don't have all the answers. Like, we can't do this on our own. And so I guess I just changed the way that I viewed it or defined what counseling was. And, people for some reason just don't want to admit when they're having troubles with certain aspects of their private lives. And their relationship is probably the top of that list for whatever reason. It's like admitting failure, or it's like, but when you can't do something, it's okay to admit you don't know the next step to take, and seeking a professional who can just give you that little nudge in the right direction, I think was, hands down the best decision that we ever made. And it became easy to move forward after that in one respect, because we'd never been at that stage before. We'd always had a number of conversations, and Maria had circled back many times to address some of these issues. And I just wasn't really receiving the message as loud and clear as I should have. And so her leaving for a couple of days really put things in perspective, because being alone with no contact for those couple of days gave me a lot of time to think. And I realized that, she was definitely the most important aspect of my life. And with her not in it, everything was just a lot less pleasant and enjoyable. And that, this was definitely something that I wanted to fix, to rebuild, to redesign, whatever you want to call it.
So is there something foundational, I guess, that you've learned through this last year of your journey?
If you both are committed and you both put in the effort, you can fix it. So even if you are feeling like, the spark is gone, the magic is gone, and, you're just coexisting and living together, if you are both committed and you work at it, that you can turn it around. Like, I feel like we're more in love now than...
And the important thing is what Maria said about being committed. And I know that word's probably a bit cliched sometimes. Like, of course, it's about commitment. But I guess what that means is you have to have, and I'll use a education term as agency, that the individuals involved have to actually invest and want to take that next step. I mean, had I been even the smallest bit resistant to counseling still and hadn't booked in that session, we might not be sitting here right now, because that was a very important step for her. And even though I was speaking my own language, I was doing what I thought she wanted, what I thought made me a good husband or a good partner, but I hadn't listened closely enough to her along the way. It's like, well, I was just speaking the wrong language. I had to do things that I knew were more important for her and prioritize those essential elements for what, Maria needed, as well as myself. This wasn't doing her any favors. This was actually investing equally in our relationship, because it was good for both of us, not just me making concessions. Not at all. And so, it's that deliberate action. So, that's easier said than done, because sometimes you have a partner that might be resistant and not as open to, taking that sort of scary step to do counseling or whatever. So that's where the conversations are so important. And, we make time in our lives for so many things, even just, keeping up with our socials. And so I'm not sure why people tend to put their relationship on the back burner as though it's not the most important element of your lives together, whether you have kids or a job. The only thing that makes all that work is that you, I guess, kind of have each other. And the minute that breaks down, everything else kind of falls along with it. So it became really easy to prioritize us, because that's so important. She's the only family I have here, and the most important part of it. So why wouldn't I take positive steps towards changing? It just seemed easy and logical to me. So I was lucky that was my experience with it. I know not everyone has the same, but it also means you got to keep trying as well. It's just not something you just put a bit of effort into once or twice, have a couple of date nights, and all is magically fixed. It is an ongoing I can't show up to work one day a week and say that's good enough. I have to show up every day and put in that effort. And marriage is no different. But relationships in general are no, regardless of
whether it's
status,
romantic or not. Yeah, and I think so. For 2021, we've set a goal of taking at least 5 minutes a day for some intentional connection time. So obviously date night once a week as well, but even if it's just a 5-minute conversation over coffee in the morning or, in the evening after the day is done. And I think that's really important to check in with your partner and check in on your relationship and talk about, things outside of running the household and your daily lives, because that is a romance killer.
And that 5 minutes has to be a very focused and sort of deliberate 5 minutes too. We have these sort of little agreement criteria, mobile phones off and away. There's nothing else coming between that 5 minutes of, I guess some of the language you've learned is turning towards, that intention is that, I'm going to listen to you. We're going to connect. We're going to talk about whatever, but we're going to be here in that moment with each other. And that's really important because this life that we lead now is so full of distractions all the time. It's easy to see why people don't connect as much as they should or as often as they should.
And we've used some tools to help us with that. So again, I'll refer back to the Gottman Institute, but they have a podcast called Small Things Often, where each episode's less than 5 minutes or less. And they'll just give you a little relationship tip. And so we'll listen to it. We'll talk about it together. They also have an app with like a deck of cards.
The love note thing.
Yeah, well, so the card decks, there's different categories. So there's date night questions, there's sex questions, there's all kinds of things.
Everything.
So yeah, doing stuff like that. And then they also have a newsletter. So we get 2 a week. And then sometimes we'll read through that together and chat about it. And but sometimes it's not as formal as that. Sometimes it's just, a conversation.
And they're even just nice little reminders sometimes. You might do some of these, little activities once or twice. Doesn't mean it's going to stick. And so revisiting those reminds you of some of those helpful strategies that we employed early on that we had maybe forgotten about. So that's where that sort of positive habit or routine is important, is you have to put the energy into it on a regular basis, make it part of your routine. And that's what came out of us being in lockdown together too for the better part of 3 months or more. Every day was just, we get up early, have our coffee, do yoga together for 18 to 24 minutes. And then, might have some reading time. We go for our morning walk or afternoon walk. So that part of lockdown was amazing. The time that we got to spend together, because now I wasn't commuting 2 hours a day. So we had more time and we wanted to make sure we used that time to our advantage. So, and no one is really time poor. We find things to fill our day with, but if it's a priority, you will easily find the time for it. And that's all we did. We decided to make it our priority.
Yeah. Hey, Maria and Andy, thank you so much. Andy, like you said, there is a lot of stigma or social weight that goes around having marriage counselling or seeing a relationship therapist. And a big part of Nathan and I starting the podcast is that we want to just smash that to smithereens. It's like you said, if you had a broken arm and it was hurting and you weren't at your normal functionality, you would go and see a doctor. You would go and get help to heal that thing that is hurting. And there is no way that you would expect to have a car for 14 years and you've never taken it to the shop. That's just crazy. So I just want to honor and say thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your story and the transformation that you've had over this last year. I really appreciate that. Before we sort of click out, what I would love to know, is there one tip maybe from each of you that you would recommend for couples to help them keep their relationship fueled up?
For me, I guess it's find what works for you. We throw out the Gottman Institute and other things, but these are not fix-alls. I'm always quite hesitant to look at those self-help books and look for that one special magical information that just fixes everything. It doesn't exist. And so even with the Gottman, we look at what's on offer and what works for us, and then trial and error, because it takes a lot of different approaches and strategies, not just one. It's like people say, oh, lose weight fast in just 5 minutes a day. This just sounds too good to be true, and it probably is. And so when it comes to counseling and other tools and tips, you've got to use a range of those and find what works for you, because not everything will. And so it's a bit of just that experimental sort of approach.
Yeah, I have a similar methodology. It's all of the relationship advice and tools and resources and books and podcasts and all those kind of things, kind of like an all-you-can-eat buffet. And you go to the buffet and you take the bits you like. And if you try it and it's not for you, you don't go back for seconds. You don't have to eat everything, but you have the agency to choose what works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing. What about you, Maria?
So mine will just be more kind of, I guess, one thing is just make a regular date night. And it could be once a fortnight or weekly or whatever, works for you. But make a regular date night, put it in your calendars, commit to it, alternate organizing, and make sure that time is sacred relationship connection time. So try not to talk about the humdrum running of the household,
operations,
kids, or whatever. Just focus on you. And in that, like, even if you've been together for 1 decade, 2 decades, whatever, don't assume that you know your partner inside and out. We all evolve, we all change. In those date nights, I find it's been really great to ask those kind of open-ended questions. And, this is a Gottman term, but creating a love map. So where you get to find out the inner workings of your partner. So finding out, about their dreams and their aspirations, because those things change after, over time. Or even asking about things from the past. Like, I can't possibly know every single thing that, Andy has experienced in the 26 years before he met me. And so, what is it about the place that you grew up that you loved the most? Or, what's your most, your fondest childhood memory or whatever. And you get to share all these, I guess, stories and memories and aspirations with each other and get to know your partner on a deeper emotional level. And then you're not just talking about the normal day-to-day stuff. And that opens the door to really connect. So yeah, I guess my tip would be regular date night, alternate organizing, and make sure that time is sacred connection time, and avoid talking about day-to-day stuff and really connect as a couple.
Yeah, I love that, because I know that's been a real game changer for us as well, having those date nights, alternating organizing. But I also, I think one thing that's really worked for us is like some of those more immersive experiences, probably like your Oktoberfest date night, where I guess you're not showing up necessarily as your normal person, or like the way you normally do. And so it does expose a different side to you, and it kind of opens up that conversation about, what's different about you, or what's something that I don't know, because it does kind of open up that different aspect to a person and
tap into that playful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And people forget that they enjoy that process. I mean, when you first start dating someone, I think back to the effortless hours spent just chatting, and asking questions about family and where have you been? And it's so much fun getting to learn about that person. And there's still lots to learn, like Maria said, because we evolve as we grow together. And yet we forget to engage with that process, the one that we used to love so much, just that quality time, getting to know each other. So you have to sort of rekindle that.
You too. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
We know how important education is to both of you. So to say thank you for joining us today, we've given a 1-month sports program to some young adults in India. They use this program to help teach them life skills and communication skills, and it creates an encouraging and safe space which leads to increased trust and acceptance. This project is looked after by Dream a Dream, and it's been possible by our partnership with Buy One, Give One.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Love
so
that.
football is a way to impart life skills and get people to come together and develop communication skills and support one another. So thank you so much for making that possible.
That's
great.
fantastic. Thank you for
that.
That's wicked. I love it.
So Maria and Andy, if our listeners have really enjoyed what you've been talking about and want to connect with you or want to learn a little bit more, how should they do that?
I'm on socials as parkrun.girl.
Yep. And I'm captain.canuck
78.
I didn't want to date myself.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Very welcome.
guys.
Thanks, guys.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.